Well, I'll call it vigilantism if you don't want to, because PAGAD has failed. PAGAD existed in 1996 at the peak of its power. It showed the world that it had the political will to take on gangs. And by 2002, we had all these gang leaders, 30 of them that were executed in that particular way. So, in that way, PAGAD will say that was a success. But what that has done is that it spawned hundreds of other gangs that broke away from the bigger gangs because of the lack of leaders, and new leaders have emerged. I think when it comes to this approach where PAGAD is now marching with political parties, I think we must be very, very, very cautious of that. I think political parties think that they can gain votes by marching with PAGAD. It's not going to work. I'm already seeing traces, the marches in Bonteheuwel, in Tafelsig. What you did see there was that the community stoning the police as a result, turning against the police because of their support for the gangs. In Bonteheuwel, what you did see was that the gangs were almost prepared to take on PAGAD. If it were not for the police, the public order policing individuals, you would have seen a shootout between gangsters. They were mobilized. They were ready for a confrontation with PAGAD. I'm very, very worried about that because there was another march in Mitchell's Plain on Sunday where the EFF, and I think there are other parties that are toying with the idea of joining these particular marches. And I worry about that in the long term. That's going to lead us nowhere, and it's leading to lawlessness. When we have lawlessness on the street, anybody can govern. And I think that the police, the public police at least, have shown that they do no longer have a wherewithal to take this on. Our police are tired, they're overworked, they face criticisms every day, and they also, some of them are corrupt, are thoroughly corrupted. In the Modak trial, there's a police officer on trial for providing information on police operations um, to Modak, and they use this information to kill this police colonel, Charles Kinnes. I don't think that we must think of gangs as youngsters running around with guns anymore. This is a very, very, very organized thing, and I think that PAGAD also has changed dramatically. I think the G-force, the old G-force, have been decimated. A lot of people that have been released since all the murders that are back on the streets. There's one or two individuals that have located themselves in Mitchell's Plain, which is the new home for PAGAD, and they're recruiting individuals from all over. But there's constant surveillance over these individuals. And if you read David Africa's Lives on the Line, he documents how the PAGAD G-force was taken down and how people were kind of compromised. Now, in the face of a lack of that type of crime intelligence that he talks about as a crime intelligence officer, and what we have now, we have the recipe for lawlessness. And you're beginning to see that on the streets, on the disruption of everyday life in schools, in clinics, in businesses. And so the shooting occurs anywhere at any time. And then on the highways. So there are calls as a result. And this kind of completely freaks me out for a state of emergency coming from some of these communities. It's right wing approaches. It's never going to work where they want gang leaders to be picked up, shot, and the methods that's being used in KwaZulu Natal, extrajudicial killings. You hear this, and you hear the journalists speaking about this. And just yesterday, I had a huge fight with the journalist who asked me about this. And I feel that journalists are kind of promoting this idea of we need emergency measures. We've all seen the type of emergency measures when during the COVID-19 pandemic, where police officers exercised so much brutality against people and killed so many different people over the period, and so did the army. We can't go back there. During a state of emergency, if you look at the definitions of poker, anybody crossing the street with clothes that don't fit can become a gang because a neighbor complains a gang is walking in my area. And these could be innocent children and young people having laughing loud and crossing the street. In terms of a state of emergency, they will become a gang and people's kids could be killed. So I'm very, very worried that South Africa is kind of beginning to slide and fit the mold of Trumpism and other countries where you see the emergence of right-wing parties consolidating their leadership and their control. And with the ANC as a governing party weakening, you're seeing institutions of governance through political parties that is taking away the state's power by stealth. And one can only look at the city of Cape Town and the private security industry, where they're beginning to appropriate powers such as investigating crime that the Constitution has never given them. And so we must worry as human rights defenders what that all means. And if we allow this slide to continue, the very next thing is that there's going to be calls for the Constitution to be changed. And people have died to get those rights in this country. And I think ordinary people don't understand the consequences and the depth of what will happen when these rights are taken away and their freedom is taken away.